Hello and welcome back to Book and Page. We are finishing up Act 1 of Aristophanes' The Wasps today. Shorter little section, so probably a bit of a shorter video, but let's go ahead, start with our usual summary, then get into talking about things. So, we finished up last video with the puppies coming out to plead for their father, who's being accused of stealing the cheese. And Filio feels himself weakening. And he tries to harden his heart, and he blames the soup for it. But he still wants to accuse and find the accused guilty. Luckily, Deli's here, and Filio has tears in his eyes, so Deli leads him over to the acquittal urn. So, a note to last week's video, I was correct. The urns are the voting system for the courtroom. Yay. But Deli leads Filio over to the acquittal urn so he can drop his little pebble in. And at first, Filio thinks he is convicted, the criminal dog, and then the pebbles are counted, and Filio has acquitted him. And the man collapses because he didn't mean to do that. And Deli basically says, well, just give it all up. I'll take you out to dinner. You'll do relaxing things. And Filio finally gives in entirely and says, that's it. No more court. And Deli leads him into the house in his weakened state because he did not convict the dog of stealing the cheeses. And then we have the chorus come back out. Oh, it's, there's a middle section of the chorus that is basically just like, Aristophanes writes good plays, guys. Come on. Let's talk about ourselves in character again. Yeah, so the chorus and chorus leaders come out, and they start by talking about the writer of the play Aristophanes, and basically how he came out swinging originally, and then he got more deep than people were expecting, and they rejected him, and come on guys, come on, Aristophanes writes good plays, his comedies are good, shut up. And then there is just this moment where they switch back into character and talk about themselves, because they are, of course, the jurors who are dressed up as the Wasps. And we get a little bit of history, which is to say that they were warriors against the Persians, and now they've reached peacetime, but they're still fierce in everything they do because they've got these weapons on their butts. And we're not going to get paid if we just acquit everybody. So, yeah, there's a couple things to talk about, because there's sort of three clear sections in all of this. There's the section with Filio and Deli. There is the section of, come on guys, Aristophanes is good. And then there's the section of, like, the Wasps in their roles. And we established last time that we had this sort of slight wall break happening, and that's just ramped up here where the chorus comes out. And they're not the characters in this moment, they are sort of a chorus of actors discussing the playwright. But why is this placed here? Why do we have sort of this switch out moment? And why does this entire thing feel really, really uncomfortable? Because each part is sort of uncomfortable to address for different reasons. So let's start at the beginning. The tricking of Filio into acquittal. Well, I think we all know why that makes us feel uncomfortable. We might agree that the dog should be acquitted, but the trickery used here by Deli feels very underhanded, and it's enough to actually cause Filio to collapse. But he doesn't blame his son here. It is, in fact, him blaming himself. He somehow betrayed part of himself in this acquittal moment. And he seems really overwhelmed by it. He seems almost to feel like he has gone against the gods, having been, not even having been tricked, having acquitted the dog. There's no moment where he addresses his son as having tricked him. The mistake, he's fully blaming himself for that, which is really weird. First and foremost, because we're already uncomfortable with Deli having tricked his father. And then there's just this self-blame moment where we're suddenly reoriented in Filio's head. Because a lot of what I talked about in the past video was sort of the fact that we're feeding into this power fantasy. And that's problematic. But then Deli here subverting it so entirely is also problematic, because there's no in-between moment. Like, Filio is getting what he wants, getting what he wants, getting what he wants, and then there's this moment of trickery in which he is completely betrayed, and he collapses. Everything as he understands it about himself is suddenly subverted. And his own identity in this moment, like, just disappears. So, the trickery is definitely something that we probably feel uncomfortable about, but also the fact that Filio identifies himself so much with convicting those who come to the court, the accused, that one acquittal just tears him apart. That's not a good way of existing. And then this is sort of a point that's really played up, because this is the third part of this part of the play, where the chorus comes back in as their wasps, and we get this reorientation of them as well, which is to say that they used to be warriors. They made their livelihoods and their name for themselves on the battlefield. They made their kudos out on the battlefield, being victorious and ruthless and vicious and courageous. And then that was taken away from them. Not through trickery, but through peace. And the thing you're always going to note when it comes to war novels is that warriors make peace, which then makes them irrelevant. And that's happened here. What we're seeing is a group of old men who used to be young men who fought in a war. That war ended, and suddenly they had nothing. So they found meaning in serving on the jury. But they still acted viciously through that. They still acted like the warriors they once were. And this seems, at least they understand it, as having been encouraged. One of the very last lines we get in this section, I'm going to see if I can find it and I'll read it to you. Yeah, that if you haven't got a sting, you get no jury fee. And this is played doubly. So part of it is if we don't act angrily. But it's also a defense of we've earned this. We deserve this. Because if you go through the entire thing, it is saying we served in the military. And because of that, we deserve this position. Yeah. Basically, it's going through. Of course, we have our drones as well, so the stingless brutes who shirk their military duties, letting others do the work. So there are other members of the society who didn't serve in the military. And sure enough, they gobble up as much as they can get of income we have earned with no end of toil and sweat. It drives us mad to think that those who've never raised a hand or risked a single blister to defend their native land can draw their pay with all the rest. I think the rule should be that if you haven't got a sting, you get no jury fee. And suddenly, this is an attack on a person's integrity because of what they gave to the society. So we have to view Filio through this lens as well. Because what Delhi has done here is not just trick his father so a dog can live. It is somehow told his father that everything he's given to society means absolutely nothing. Because all of these men, all of these wasps, risked their lives in war. So an easy payment, standing on the jury, is what they deserve, right? But that's, again, uncomfortable. Deeply uncomfortable. Because this is two different areas of life. And just because you are a good warrior doesn't mean you're going to be a good judge. And I mean, the Wasps fully admit that they tend to be vicious and use their stings in everything. So turning around and saying, we deserve this from what we gave to society, well, that's problematic. Because, well, what happens if they're wrong? What happens if they're wrong? How many innocent people are you going to convict because you think you deserve the position you're in for something completely different that you did? Especially then when you have that judgment of anyone who didn't serve is a brute who shirked his duty. Surely we can recognize that people were needed elsewhere. The entire society can't be made up of warriors. Well, here in Athens, that image is different, because they do have Sparta. Now, us looking back on it can see a lot of problems with Sparta. But that idea of a society of warriors is very apparent to the Athenians. Is it just, though, doesn't ever seem to be the question. At least not to the people who are being sent to court. The Wasps are asking justice for themselves. We serve society, we should be given this position of power. And be paid for it. Yeah, you want to make it even more uncomfortable? Isn't that whole section about Aristophanes? Him coming in and saying, I write good plays, and you should recognize me for it. It just suddenly feels like a whole lot of feet stomping. I don't have to prove anything to you guys just need to see my genius. I don't have to speak your language, you just have to get with the program. I'm not sure that's how the world works. Maybe it feels to us like we should have the world work that way. I know full well that there are points in my life where I just want people to recognize that I've worked really hard on something. And I want them to see it as worthy of attention. But stamping my feet and saying, guys, you're not paying enough attention to me, that's what it comes off sounding like. So is Aristophanes inserting this insistence that everyone recognize him into this point? Is that weakening the play or actually strengthening it? Because this moment is going to affect how we view the Wasps and their insistence that they be recognized with positions of power and pay. Is the playwright suddenly also a warrior? And do we have an answer to that? I think our own answers are always going to come down to our own perspectives. Someone who served in the military, especially in an active war zone, might view the Wasp very differently than somebody who's always lived in a peaceful situation. Someone who has served on a jury, or as a lawyer, or a judge, or has been the accused before, is going to have very different perspectives in all this. Trickery seems unfair, but what happens when trickery is the only way to get real justice? And is it real justice if you have to be tricked into it? Ugh. This moment of the play just sort of threw everything up in the air and said, figure it out. That makes me uncomfortable too. This entire section just makes me uncomfortable. Maybe Act 2 will help me figure it out. I'm going to keep reading, and I hope you do too. See you next time.